Hey everyone, this is James Ellers. Welcome again to another episode of The Gang Saves Humanity. As always, I am joined by Heidi.
Hey.
And today we are joined by Max Federman. So, Max, why don't you tell our audience about yourself and what you are up to?
Absolutely. So, I grew up here in Oklahoma City, born and raised. I went to school at the University of Pennsylvania and worked in Los Angeles for a few years. And I have been coming back to Oklahoma throughout the time that I was in LA. I worked as a liaison between filmmakers or producers and film crews in Oklahoma and trying to bring projects here. And while doing that, I got to see the role that state film offices play in creating new jobs, helping people. And while I was in LA, I worked for some bigger studios and got to work with state film offices around the country and helping strong unions, skilled workers find long-term jobs in these areas. And there's a part of just being able to come home that is so special, and how I had always planned on coming back here, and how much the city has transformed, in my opinion, for the better, and how much progress we have left. And just being back here and seeing, like, especially during this time, the fear in a lot of these people and just panic all around and wanting to help. So Heidi and I worked on the Yang campaign for a while, and I'd always been interested in running and doing something. I wasn't necessarily planning to do it this year, but my home district here, House District 82, there's the current incumbent is Nicole Miller, and I just couldn't really abide by her policies, what she's been doing. And when I regularly attend a lot of the Democrat meetings out here, and no one was going to run against her. She raised a tremendous amount of money in 2018, and it seems to have scared off a lot of people who would otherwise join the race. And I just really wasn't willing to let her run unopposed. But when we started picking up a lot of traction. We have the Yang Gang to thank for a lot of it. They've been volunteering, and a lot of these people have been phone banking for almost a year now, and they're skilled, they're efficient, they can really get through a list. I remember, 2 days ago, we put up a list and we're almost all the way through it. It was like 1,500 people.
Awesome.
And the feedback that we've been getting from people has been really promising. And at this moment, we're taking her on when she's vulnerable. She had been against a lot of progressive policies, and she put out something like House Bill 1182, which is essentially a bill that will suspend a doctor's license if they practice an abortion. And during a pandemic, we really need doctors, and the idea that there hasn't been a retraction or any sort of statement on that since. And I asked her on Twitter yesterday what she was planning to do for people who are scared now that April 1st is coming up, and most of us haven't been working in 2 weeks. Most of us don't know when our next paycheck is coming. Does she plan to put a moratorium on eviction, shutting off utilities? And no answer from her yet. But when she got into office, she was backed by a lot of large fossil fuel companies. And as soon as she was elected, she turned around and gave them a massive subsidy coming straight from state income, and completely gutted our education budgets and our infrastructure budgets. And for anyone in this area, we know our schools were already in a lot of trouble. Mm-hmm. You're driving around here, you can see that our roads are in terrible shape. We need that money elsewhere. And now oil's falling below $20 a barrel. It makes you wonder, why are we bailing out these companies that can't survive in a free market? That is the exact opposite of what a conservative should stand for.
Exactly.
And oil, I'm the first to admit, oil is the backbone of Oklahoma's economy. But because we've relied on that too long, we have really been late in the game trying to develop other alternative industries here. And we need to really start putting that subsidy money to better use for other industries here in state, so that we can get a technology sector, so we could start developing alternative energy, so that we could still be an energy provider and keep a lot of the skilled workers we have here. I believe there's a lot of potential in hemp, especially like hemp plastics, hemp paper, some of the other industrial sides of it. And we could use those chemical engineers and a lot of the skilled workers from the oil industry and that, but that requires us creating opportunities with VOTEX and any other vocational schools and putting people to work. But in a lot of these policies, it's just bailing out private prisons, oil companies, and it's not getting to people, and it's not getting to the people. And because they keep contributing to her campaign, she's just running on that. And a lot of people around here are upset. And I'm the only Democrat running against her, but there's a conservative libertarian running as well. And his main gripe is what she's done with the schools.
And she's been your representative for how long?
Just 2 years.
2 years. Okay. So
Yeah,
since 2018. Okay.
Right.
So do you think the chances are good that you guys can make her a one-term congresswoman?
I like to think so. I mean, I think she's a lot more vulnerable than people realize. And, you know, I'm making a couple hundred phone calls a day, and I've primarily been focusing on Republicans because in this area, a lot of Democrats vote party line. And that doesn't mean we're ignoring them and not talking to them. But I've really put my personal effort during these quarantine times into calling as many people as I can. And we're noticing, especially younger Republican women are abandoning her and coming over to me in large quantities. We have a lot of women just do not feel like their priorities are being represented or that they're being heard by her. And a lot of them are committing to me. And I mean, that feels great. And the other candidate, the libertarian who's running, is also picking up steam because he's just pointing out our schools they're talking about a 3 or a 4 day school week. And that was before the pandemic. And now, you know, Oklahoma, we need some sort of Medicaid expansion. We need something here to just help get this under control.
Yeah, for sure. So what was the logic? I mean, take us back to when you first decided to run, because obviously it's kind of it's not something that a lot of us would just have in the back of our minds. Like, hey, I'm going to run this cycle. So because a lot of the things you're running into was actually a lot of what I was running into, like literally running against the main people that didn't really have strong policies, but they raised a lot of money. And for whatever reason, only raising a lot of money gives someone credibility, which is something we need to change right away, because that is the wrong way to get people to think. So what was the logic going from, hey, there's a huge problem here, we need someone to run, from going from that to, hey, I'm going to run you're running for the state legislature, right?
Yes. Well, so when I left the Yang campaign, I was planning on coming back to my home and teaching at the high school that I went to. I was going to teach computer science there, and then with the pandemic, everything kind of fell apart. But before that, even, I was just looking for something else to occupy my time with. And I was planning on working with the DCCC to help out Kendra Horn. And I was attending local county Democrats meeting, which was at the library just up the street from me. And I realized no one was going to run against her. And I remember people from neighboring districts coming over, candidates, and trying to get contributions, trying to get support, and absolutely no one here was going to run. And I talked to a few people, tried to get them to run, and no one wanted to put in that amount of time against a machine like hers. And she very much thinks of herself as this Trumpian rising star in the state. That's why she's putting out things like House Bill 1182. She clearly has ambitions beyond this office. She hasn't really been representing her constituents. She is representing herself as she tries to further her own career here. And I was pretty disappointed that big money in politics are able to scare people off like this, because I know a number of people here who would be great opponents against her. And I just got a lot of hard no's. They didn't want to get into it. They didn't want it to get dirty. They don't want to face someone like that. They don't want Oppo research on them or something. And I just decided, you know what, if no one's going to run against her, I'm not going to make this easy on her.
Yeah, good.
Then once we got started, we built up a lot of momentum. I actually met a man out here who was a big prison reform activist he was getting signatures in front of my grocery store here. And I got to talking with him. He has 3 kids. He has 2 other friends who have been canvassing before, trying to get prison reform to the forefront here. And it's one of my top policies. And we really hit it off. And they've been some of my most active, enthusiastic volunteers. That, with a lot of the Oklahoma City Yang Gang, some other people throughout the country who are helping by a phone bank. And we got a real machine going, and we have been hitting all of our goals and who we're contacting, the money that we're raising. And even though we're kind of stuck in quarantine, stuck at home, we're making a lot of progress. And, from the numbers that we looked at, kind of just having to assume that last election it was just straight party line voting. We have that magic number of what I need to get in order to win. It went down as soon as the Libertarian announced, and we made some progress registering new voters before the pandemic really took effect, and reaching over to a lot of these younger women Republicans. We've been getting a lot of progress there, and our little election calculus here is looking pretty good. I'm hoping that I would like to be able to dedicate more time to registering new voters, and it's very difficult right now with not actually being able to go out and contact them. But I'm hoping that we will be able to get out and it'll be safe to go and knock on doors again sometime before November. But it really came together, I would say, about a month ago now, of like, oh, we can win this. And then when everyone started quarantining, we kind of, it was an obstacle to overcome. But then we realized, I'm 27, turning 28 in 2 weeks. If it comes down to who's able to reach out better online, I like my odds in that fight.
Yeah, good. I mean, that's one of the many Yang policies that's like should be common sense, is automatic voter registration, right? Because
Absolutely.
something as simple as, hey, register to vote. It's, when you take a step back and think about it, it's such a dumb thing that we don't have automatic voter registration. So
I even would like to take it a step further. I think there should be a tax incentive for voting.
I've not thought of that.
Tell us more.
Yes.
It's not much more beyond that. I don't know the exact number or anything, but I do think there should be some sort of modest tax incentive for voting. And I think it's not just in presidentials. I think if you vote in your local politics, if you vote on ballot measures, any sort of referendum, I think that there should be some sort of tax incentive for that, for participating in your society. Because you are adding value to your own community by participating and paying attention.
I've never heard that suggested before, but I can see that working, actually, because it's true that Americans are money motivated to a decent degree. So yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, and I mean, I think there's a lot of pessimism in voting, I think, coming up in November. And I don't like that in a lot of elections it comes down to choosing the lesser of two evils. But I do think that it is your duty as an American to be involved in the system that we have. And I don't think we should be paying people to vote, but I do think that taking time off work, taking time out of your day to participate in democracy, that shouldn't be something that damages you financially. I don't think that it's fair, especially to working people who, I still don't know why voting is not a national holiday. And I do think that it should be. But until that's able to happen, I think that there should be some sort of tax incentive to promote it.
Yeah, that's smart, because that's one of the big things we need to figure out soon is turnout. Because if more people voted, then a lot more of these policies that we need would actually get through, but a lot of people just aren't incentivized.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you look at a lot of these policies. I mean, look at what Congress is doing right now. They're trying to bail out, these big corporations because, your average American working minimum wage is expected to have the types of savings to survive months without income. But, oh, God forbid, multi-billion-dollar companies don't get quite as much profit for a few weeks. I think if every American voted and was aware of these issues, no way would they be able to get away with this. We wouldn't have senators and Congress people selling off all their stock before a pandemic. If we actually had full participation in this country, and this is something I said a lot when I was campaigning for Yang in Iowa. I would talk to people who'd be like, I really like his policies. I like these ideas. I just don't know if we can win. And I would say, imagine if, when I was registering people to vote, imagine if everyone voted. Do you really think any of these common sense ideas would be thought of as radical or, oh, we can't make that happen? There are so many more people who want these things to happen who are not voting than there are people that are actively against them.
Yeah, and that's the turnout. I mean, and to your previous point, I read something a couple days ago, and it's just a tweet someone posted, but it says, isn't it weird that people living paycheck to paycheck are supposed to have months worth of savings for emergencies while billion-dollar corporations
yeah, they don't have anything in the bank to
they're on the brink
get them through this.
Yeah, and there's a lot of companies like, I think, was it Boeing that was trying to get a bailout, but then they're like, okay, if the government wants a stake in our company in exchange for a bailout, like, we don't want it. So it's like, y'all don't actually need it. And again, I think that it's really
they were acting like they don't need the government's help. Like, fine, we don't want to give it to you.
They sneak all these provisions in, like, companies with over 500 employees aren't required to provide paid sick leave, and yet these smaller companies are, and it just doesn't make any sense. And then you start to realize the role that these companies play in our political system, between lobbyists funding campaigns. Of course, politicians are going to look out for these people's best interest, and it really just comes down to corruption, which I think is my prime issue. I'm not really able to be bought. I've never been a very money-oriented person.
Either.
And at the end of the day, I'm just trying to make basic changes to my state so that we can survive for another 100 years. We need to diversify our economy. We need to end mass incarceration. We need to save our schools so that we actually have a future. And if your main issue is making sure that an oil company that is failing in the free market is able to keep on going, I'm sorry, I just don't think we see eye to eye, and that's fine. Vote for someone else. But if you care about your kids getting a good education and having every opportunity you had growing up, vote for me.
Yes, and you can find him. I want to plug it a couple times. So Max's website is max4ok.com. There you can donate to Max. You could sign up to volunteer. So definitely check that out, max4ok.com. And then on Twitter, he's also at the other Max. at other Max on Twitter, right?
Yeah, my campaign Twitter is max4ok82.
You gave out the wrong one, James.
I'll take the personal shout out. Why not?
All right, so say that again. It's Max.
At max4ok82.
And it is the word for or the number for?
The word for. But if you follow my private one, you can see amazing jokes about me wanting to be able to flex out of a cast like The Rock in Fast 5. But if you want more of my policy issues, follow this one.
You gotta have a mixture, yeah. So we're gonna check that out too. So the all business one is at max4ok82 on Twitter, and then again, the website max4ok.com. So when is the election? Tell us more about when the election.
So as of now, there are no Democrats running against me, so it will just.
So you're going in November.
Yeah, so I'm going all the way till November,
okay,
and hoping just get as many people to show up as possible. But before we move on my website, we have a part for you to sign up to volunteer. And right now, I am currently undergoing a background check to volunteer for Meals on Wheels. Anybody who signs up right now, we'll send you anything if you're interested in phone banking. But if you'd like to get out and help the community, we have a lot of resources we can send you about being able to volunteer in Oklahoma City and other places surrounding the city. If you want to make a difference in your community, whether it's checking in on elderly people or delivering lunches for kids who depend on school lunches, We are starting programs to help with that, and until we're through this and people aren't socially distancing, that's what we're focusing our in-person efforts on.
That's awesome. So again, that's Max for OK, where you could sign up to volunteer. Please donate, because any amount helps a ton.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's doubting that we're out working, because I don't believe that Representative Miller is campaigning yet.
Really?
But we're putting in a lot of work, and we're filling in the gap there.
Good.
But every little bit of money helps. We are really just trying to do this grassroots. We're not taking money from special interest, big companies. This is all from people like you. We're about to hit $5,000, and
Wow.
filing deadline is April 8th through the 10th, and that's really when we're expecting a lot more donations, because it'll be sent out of who's running. But for right now, we're doing pretty well. We're on track. But the idea is we're still trying to raise money. We paid for the website. We're printing out walking cards once we're able to go outside again. But we have a lot of people like yard signs, and we're just now starting to put in the orders for that. But every little bit does help. And if you're donating right now, I can promise you it'll go to a good cause. We're going out and helping a lot of elderly people who can't really risk compromising their immune systems right now.
That's awesome. I will say, as someone that has personally worked with you, I know that you are a very hardworking person. In fact, I saw so many things that came out of the work that you did. Initially, the Storm Lake House, I'm sure you remember, it was a volunteer house, and it started out terribly.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
it went from one of what was literally a black eye for our campaign to something. I mean, it was completely turned around, and I know that was in large part due to you and your hard work and your work ethic. And I know that everyone there absolutely loved you. So, like I said, I know, having worked with you, I know what a hard worker you are, and how dedicated you are, and I super appreciated working with you. And I wanted to ask, from the things that that you had to do working for the Yang campaign, and the things that, I mean, this was your first campaign, right? Your first experience with working with the campaign?
No, I volunteered a lot.
Okay.
I've been volunteering since I was 16, but
Okay.
this was my first time moving and working for a campaign.
Okay.
I've worked on some local ones in LA before.
So what did you learn from the Yang campaign that you're taking with you to your campaign?
I think what I really took away was the power of essentially treating voters like adults, of coming up with clear policies and being able to make an argument for how that will improve their lives, and just communicating that to them. You don't need to convince them that you're the greatest, or you will change the world. If you can give someone a clear-cut idea on how you will improve their life, and leave it up to them to decide whether it'll work or not, but communicate to them, let them know that you've done the work and that you believe these things, and go forward with your policies. I'm not running a campaign based on my personality or how much money I raised or anything like that. These are a lot of policies that have worked in other countries, that have worked in other areas, and that there is data supporting. And these things, I truly believe that enacting these policies will improve lives for everyday Oklahomans. And take it or leave it. This is what I'm running on. This is what I would like to do. I would like to be an advocate for my constituents, my neighbors here. And that is what I'm trying to put out front. And from the Yang campaign, I really learned, Andrew.
No, we lost him.
Max, come back.
Oh, there he is. You cut out for a second.
We
There you
lost you.
Yeah, Andrew was a huge inspiration for me, because he was just some random Asian guy running for president. But he put out these ideas that a lot of people would consider politically risky, and a lot of people, I don't want to call them cowards, but nobody would say this because they were afraid that someone would call them a commie or something. But Yang had these ideas and he thought them through, and he presented them, and people, even a lot of the major debates, he would get laughed at to his face, and he just kept going. And the more that he got these messages across, the more people started paying attention.
Yes.
Until right now, where the majority of Americans now support UBI. The majority of Americans have come around that this guy was not just out there trying to buy your vote. This is something that could improve your lives, and right now is necessary to get people to survive this.
So how do you think Oklahomans feel about UBI?
A lot of the people that I've talked to out here are, lately I haven't been talking to too many people face to face, and
That's good.
I'm a big advocate of a national UBI. I don't like the idea of it being a patchwork system where different state to state. And, I think that would be better than nothing, but in my mind, it's not the ideal program.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, I think almost everybody is on board with getting money to people immediately.
Mm-hmm.
And I think once it starts being sent out, it'll be a very interesting experiment. I can pretty easily say there's never been a UBI experiment on this level and at this scale. And I am curious to watch the results, but I definitely think people have come around from when Yang was on that first debate and people were thinking of him as a novelty. So he was one of the last ones to stick around. And now he's on the forefront. He's talking with Republicans. He was talking with the White House. He's talking with the Democrats. He's speaking in front of Congress and the Senate. I think he is an example of what a real American hero looks like. If you see problems in your society, in your community, and you think you have a solution, I think it's your obligation to go out there, talk about it, run for office if you have to. But if you believe you have a solution, I think that you're obligated to try to get it out there and put it in place. And in my own community, I feel similarly. I think people think that Democrats are running to try to raise your taxes. Here in Oklahoma City, we are a heavily taxed city already. And, like the MAPS program that we have has completely transformed our downtown. It has brought the city back to life, and it has done great things for the city. But I think the last thing we need to do is raise taxes. We need to take a look at where these taxes are going. Almost a quarter is going to oil subsidies. And now oil's falling, the price is falling so far. These companies are not viable, and they're not going to be around much longer. And if you just keep upping how much money you're giving to them, it's just past the point of reason. We need to start giving these subsidies to solar, wind, geothermal, any alternative energy, try to get manufacturing back here in the state. Like what we're seeing nationally is we have outsourced all of our medical manufacturing to China, to the point when we are trying to quarantine and come up with the resources we need to protect our own people, we don't have the supply lines anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I think that when they're putting out all of these stimulus bills, I think that part of it should be that if you're going to take the government's money, you need to bring your supply line back to the United States and keep it here, because we need those manufacturing jobs. And not just that, we need to have control over these supplies. We as a country need to provide for ourselves. And in the same way, I am all for America being energy independent. And I know a lot of Oklahomans take great pride in what the energy industry has done out here. And as an environmentalist, I can understand both sides of that argument. And I know that there are people who feel a patriotic duty to try to provide energy independence for the United States. But we need to give people an alternative. And when they're saying, oh, alternative energy can't work, it would cost too much. What do you think oil thing would happen to oil if we took all the subsidies away.
Right.
We have just created this false view of how this is working. But I definitely think that we are in a pivotal time in this country right now. And in this state specifically, we need to diversify away from fossil fuels if we want for there to be prosperity here in the future.
Yeah, and what people don't understand is, for example, solar. To back up what you're saying, I've worked in the solar industry for years, and it's actually getting to the point where the cost of solar is almost cheaper than just getting the electricity from the utility. So solar actually moving forward makes a lot more sense than what everybody's currently doing. But again, the companies with the money try to control the talking points. So we'll get it to a point, and what you're saying right now will be very similar to what Andrew Yang has done, where you're talking about these things ahead of time, and in the very near future, everybody's gonna be like, "Oh shit, you're right." Yeah. Like light bulb, all these subsidies are gone. The oil companies are collapsing. Maybe
if I do my job right, if I do my job right, they'll never have that realization, and and hopefully the lights will stay on throughout.
Yeah, exactly. So again, we're joined by Max Federman. His website is max4ok.com. At his website, you can donate. You can also sign up to volunteer. So if you have some extra time during the quarantine, which you definitely should, check him out to volunteer and definitely help donate, because every dollar goes a long way. Again, on Twitter, the all business Twitter account is at max4ok82. So any closing words before we end this interview, Max?
You know, I've been really happy seeing what has come from the Yang Gang. When I told this story on Padgett's live stream, I actually got a chance to say it to Yang, I think in was that Sioux City at one of the events when we were all doing like that round circle thing. But I ended up going to business school in 2010. It was I went to the University of Pennsylvania. I did Wharton undergraduate, and I was always fascinated by UBI, to the point where I had a Google alert every time it would go up. And then sometime in like 2017, 2018, every single article started having this guy named Andrew Yang attached to it. And I started following it. And then I switched over to follow Andrew Yang Google alerts. And what has grown from that is incredible. And it's a lot of, we can't discount a lot of the younger people who have been a part of our movement and what they will accomplish in the years to come. And I think there are a lot of people who can be disheartened by, Yang suspending his campaign. They don't think it'll work out. But I think what we are seeing now is the actual building up the wave. There are politicians all across this country now who have taken, maybe a few pieces or just one piece of Yang's policies and are running with it. And we're seeing a lot of success. And I think come 2024, we're going to see that wave that he always talked about, that's building and building until Washington, D.C. cannot ignore it. And I would like anybody who's watching this to get in on that wave on the ground floor.
Absolutely.
Go to max4ok.com. And money is very precious right now. I don't want anybody to go out on it. I don't want anybody to donate if you need your money. But if you have a little extra, $5 or something, we will put it to great use, especially right now as we work to help our community. And we will keep this wave going. And I'll see you guys back in Iowa in 2024.
Awesome. I can't wait. I'm just kidding.
No, you will be in the state legislature in Oklahoma in 2024, and you can come help.
Yeah.
I'll come out and say hi. I'll give a few speeches. People in Storm Lake, I miss them.
Yeah, we'll have a big reunion.
That's awesome. Well, thank you again, Max, for joining us. We will have to have you on again before the election because we have some time. That's awesome. Yeah, so again, Max Federman, you could follow him at max4ok.com. You could donate. You could volunteer. Anything helps on Twitter at max4ok82. Again, my name is James Ellers. Heidi, always awesome. Anything else you want to say before we head out?
Yang gang, help my boy Max out if you can. If you can't donate, phone bank for him. Follow him on Twitter, keep up, because it's these races that are what's going to help us build this wave going into 2024.
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys so much for having me. James, it was great to meet you. Heidi, it's
Good
great to
seeing
meet
you, Max. I miss you.
I met you too.
Yes, thanks again for coming on, and thank you so much for running. It takes a lot just to decide to run, let alone putting something together that is going in the right direction like you're doing. So thank you again for running. Again, we've been talking to Max Federman, and we will talk to everybody soon.
See you guys.
Bye.